I think what he said was absolutely true. There was absolutely spying into my campaign. I'll go a step further. In my opinion, it was illegal spying, unprecedented spying. Hard to believe it could have happened, but it did.
President Trump wasting no time agreeing with the Attorney General. Here is William Barr responding to a question from Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen, the ranking member on the Appropriations Committee. Take a listen.
You're not suggesting, though, that spying occurred.
I don't, I guess you could, I think there's spying did occur. Yes, I think spying did occur. Congress is usually very concerned about intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies staying in their proper lane, and I want to make sure that happened.
Not surprisingly, Democrats are livid.
Let me just say how very, very dismaying and disappointing that the chief law enforcement officer of our country is going off the rails. He is the Attorney General of the United States of America, not the Attorney General of Donald Trump.
I'm amazed that the Attorney General would make that kind of statement. And it shows, I think, either a lack of understanding or willful ignorance of what goes into a counterintelligence investigation.
For more, let's turn to former Congresswoman Liz Holtzman. The New York Democrat served on the House Judiciary Committee at the height of Watergate. Let me get it out of the way. You were right and I was wrong, Liz. I got to say, I thought we give the benefit of the doubt to Barr. I thought he was an honest broker. At his confirmation hearings, I heard maybe what I wanted to hear. You were skeptical from the beginning, and given what we saw in the summary, how he basically, said no obstruction here, and then now what we saw, on the Hill this week with the invocation of spying with seemingly no evidence. I guess I was naive here. Just put, if you could, just put the importance of the Attorney General saying what he said yesterday and him deciding, in effect, what's going to be redacted out of this report we get next week.
Well, the Attorney General is supposed to be the chief law enforcement officer of the United States, and that means somebody who is attentive to the needs of fairness, impartiality, confidence of the country, which can only happen if law enforcement is not against Republicans or against Democrats, but against crime. We see now an Attorney General, and actually it was clear in the confirmation hearings, and it was clear before that, who is nothing more than a hatchet man for the Republican Party and specifically for Donald Trump. He took every advantage in terms of shutting down things that were nonpartisan and putting politics right into it. For example, he said in the summary he released about the Mueller report that because Mueller didn't come to a conclusion about whether he could prosecute Trump, that left it to him to decide whether obstruction took place. Well, Mueller didn't leave it to Barr, and there's really nothing in the charge to Mueller that would leave it to Barr. And the whole purpose of having a special counsel was to take the decision-making on prosecution out of the hands of politicians. And Barr, who is the political appointee of Trump, decided to make the prosecutorial call. That was a total violation of the spirit of the special prosecutor regulations. It was totally political. But then to come to a hearing and say that spying took place against Trump, that is a loaded word. It's an inflammatory word. It's a derogatory word. And he had no evidence. He admitted no evidence. So what he did was to just repeat the Republican playbook, repeat Donald Trump's claims that the whole investigation was tainted from the get-go, was a disaster, was false, was fake, was illegal, every derogatory term. How could he do that? He's totally destroyed his credibility. He's totally destroyed any iota of impartiality that he could have had. And he actually should resign right now. He should get out of there.
To that point, though, we already saw both the Times and the Post last week where some of the the Mueller team, and I got to think this was not people going off the reservation. They obviously would have consulted with their old boss on this, saying that when Barr basically put out that summary, it wasn't reflective of the severity of some of their findings. Given what we also heard, obviously, in what we just discussed, that Barr did, on the Hill this week, I got to think that somehow, some way, after more than a year and a half of work, Mueller and team will not go quietly in the good night. They're going to want their work product, A, seen, and B, given context. Don't you think there'll be an inevitability we'll hear from Mueller and some of those 19 prosecutors, whether or not, Barr or the president wants?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's a real problem because I think Mueller is a very straight-laced guy and a very by-the-book guy, and I don't think he's going to want to comment on a confidential report. And the people who work for him may feel the same constraint. That's why it's so important for that report to be released. And that's why it's so destructive and political and damaging for Barr to put out what he calls, well, he initially called it a summary, then he denied it was a summary, but a false statement about what's in the report. I mean, he concluded, for example, that there was no basis for a prosecution on Russia collusion. Well, in the report, it may well be that one of the reasons that Mueller was unable to make a case was because of obstruction of justice. Remember, Trump dangled a pardon in front of Manafort, who refused to talk about what happened when he turned over polling data to this Russian, we think, GRU, military intelligence guy. He turned this over to a military intelligence guy, polling data, Trump campaign polling data, but he didn't talk about it. Why didn't he talk about it? Because Trump said publicly, I'm not taking a pardon off the table. Well, if Trump interfered with the result, that's a very serious thing, interfered with the investigation. And so it seems to me for Barr to have released that, his interpretation, and he was only there for, a few days, and to me, and I'm very concerned about what we'll see and whether we'll ever see the full truth. I don't mean ever, but until we have a new president, until I'm very troubled that we may never see what's in that report.
So much of this stuff, Liz, is happening in the light of day, not related to the probe, but I guess somewhat tangentially. We've been waiting forever to get these tax returns. It's supposedly the longest audit going on in the history of mankind. But there is clear letter law here that says Congress, if they want it, can get it. And I'll read it for our audience. Section 6103. Upon written request from the chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means of the House of Representatives, the Secretary shall furnish such committee with any return or return information specified in such request. Now, you're the attorney, not me, but that seems pretty much black letter. You got to turn it over, but White House says, no, not going to happen. My point is, can they just say no?
They'll say no, and they'll say no because it's a political request, it's the Democrats, it's for an illegitimate purpose, and they'll fight it in the courts, and they'll try to stall for the next 2 years. They don't want his returns. There must be something really devastating to him in those returns that he's fighting in this way, tooth and nail, to keep them from being public. Listen, he's got nothing to hide about that. And the same thing about the investigation. If he did nothing wrong, he had nothing to fear from it. Instead, he fought the Mueller investigation tooth and nail. He's still fighting it. And the irony is, and this is what makes me angry too about Barr, is he was worried about the quote-unquote spying that took place, even though is being investigated, has been investigated. But why didn't he say that the Mueller investigation produced vital prosecutions? President has nothing to hide, then he shouldn't be afraid of an investigation. And the Attorney General has no business being political about this. But of course he is, and he should resign. He just should resign. He's got no business being there anymore. He's totally eliminated his credibility, destroyed it.
As always, great job. Elizabeth Holtzman, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, when we come back, have we hit a tipping point? You got more and more Republicans now, that are speaking out against the president for a variety of different reasons. But the question is, will they do more than just talk? Will they do something about it? We'll take a look at that after this.